I'm doing well.
So, just to give you some background, Justin, Jeff Ainsworth is up here in Western Mass, and he has worked on a couple of projects. He's working on a rather successful Facebook game right now. I'll let him tell you a little bit more about that, but I've had some good in-person talks with Jeff, actually, and he's a great guy to talk with.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the compliment. Yeah, well, it's a little early. It's only been a few months, so wildly successful is not really a good way to describe something. It's only a few months old, but so far so good. It's generating revenue, so that's always
That's pretty wildly successful in the indie sector.
yeah. Well, so just talk about it, or
Yeah, sure. Just say a little bit about it. I think Justin might
okay.
like to hear.
It's on. It's a Facebook app. It's a web app. It's built in Flash, and the game itself is targeted to older women. It's called Jane Austen Manners, and it's essentially a decorating game with a lot of different angles and ways to scale, but it has a very loyal following already. We probably have about 1,000 members in the group that supports it, and somewhere around 2,000 daily users at this point. So the thing that's noteworthy about it, the most noteworthy thing I would say, is that it has a good retention. Uh, Once you get somebody playing the game, they seem to stick with it. So that's a very elusive thing in trying to create any sort of content. Um, and I could go into more abstract on it later on, but that's essentially it.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what you've started with that. The user retention is very important. It's something I'm trying to cultivate, currently, and it's really difficult at the moment. I think what I find interesting is, as much as most tech people would kind of say that Flash is dead, I mean, clearly, not that dead. You're still working with it. It's still bringing in revenue. So that's good from a technical standpoint.
Well, it's a platform that has the distinct advantages. I don't think there's anything out there quite like it. It really lives in both it's got an object-oriented programming language you can use, and it also has a graphic interface that most artists would find very comfortable. So integrating those two things, there's really no other platform that I can think of that does it quite as well in terms of how quickly you could develop something. And I could do the entire game as a web application using the canvas tag primarily. It would take a lot longer. It's a good program. It's a good enough platform to use for speed anyway, um, and targeted toward the market that we're targeting toward, the demographic, I should say. These are
Right.
people who are pretty comfortable with the idea of a laptop or a desktop. Um, some of them play with an iPad even, but for the most part, they're pretty sedentary.
Yeah, I mean, having the Facebook ecosystem there is huge. I mean, I think we probably all agree that if you made the same game and dropped it off on some random website link, it probably wouldn't be getting nearly the coverage that it is getting.
Especially not because my players need to feel comfortable with whatever they're using. They're really not inclined to give you their credit card. But if they're in Facebook already, they sort of trust it because it's a big name, and they feel comfortable. The biggest thing is how they pay. I don't think that's the biggest hurdle. Having Facebook do it, they take a huge chunk, but there's really no other way.
Yeah, it's basically the equivalent of what Steam is doing in visibility and bringing people to your game essentially.
With Facebook though, you have that viral, um, that viral possibility where people who network with each other on a regular basis chat about it. Especially, it seems women on Facebook are much more likely to promote things they like um, with their friends.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely, I would say so.
Yes, it's a wholly different. I told Raymond the other day that I found the success to starting out the game development. Just make games that you don't want to play. Because I've already done that. I've made a game that I liked myself, and it went nowhere. So
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing because I mean, on the one hand, it's very nice to make a game that you want to play because it, helps boost what you'd like to build. On the other hand, you pick it to death and it's never good enough for you. So it's double-edged sword.
it's hard to be objective about something that is that you're so good at uh, digging down and figuring out what's wrong. Sometimes, I'll make dumb mistakes, but I make pretty much more than my share of dumb mistakes, and people
I don't
point
know
it
about
out to you. Quite valuable.
I've made plenty of dumb mistakes. I know Justin's made plenty of dumb mistakes.
I don't make any dumb mistakes. I make awesome mistakes.
Yeah, there you go. That's good. So what?
A dumb mistake is the kind that you cannot learn from or you can't get a good story out of.
Oh,
I
If you
guess
can learn from it or get a story out of it, then it was worth it.
it's a good way to look at it. We had you introduce yourself, Jeff. Justin, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself as well.
So I'm a software developer. I primarily work on enterprise software, and I dabble in game development. I never really finish anything. I come close, but there's only one me, and I have a lot of interests. Um, I made a functional Luzenki game that was going to be a Facebook game. Luzenki is kind of like Stratego, but it's a lot older and has slightly different rules. But it's a board game like chess where you don't know what your opponent's pieces are until you attack it or it attacks you. So it's kind of interesting as far as a strategy board game goes. Right now, I'm working on an app for learning how to read that is going to utilize flashcards and a couple other memorization mechanisms to learn words. And then after you learn enough words to have a good probability of successfully reading a story, you'll read a story interactively with the character. So the character may be reading and then struggle with a word that you would know, you being like 5 or 6. And so then you would say the word for the character, or you'd read the character a bedtime story, or you'd read a story and the illustrations come alive as you're reading it. So I kind of got off on a tangent on this project to get voice recognition working because I don't want to have to use an internet connection for voice recognition. I want the mobile app to not have to require internet permission. I want it to be where I want it to only require the microphone. I don't want it to need any advanced permissions. So if a parent goes to download it, they can understand exactly what it's doing, and it's not just data mining their children like it seems like every other app for small children that seems to do. I have small children, and I'm building this out of frustration. Of the current ecosystem that's out there.
This is your project that you're doing on your own time?
Yes.
And you have a line of work. You have a job you go to besides this.
Yeah. I have a regular job where I write enterprise software. And then I go home, and if I'm lucky and I play my cards right, I can get some time to work on this.
Yeah, that seems to be. I don't know about you guys. I mean, I'm probably older. I was definitely older. Maybe when I was in my 30s, I could perhaps do this kind of brain work for long stretches, but I really find that I max out at about 20 hours a week of really heavy brain work. I can't go beyond that. I wouldn't be able to do a 9 to 5 where I had to think at all and then come home and think some more. So but I think it may be partially a function of age, but I give you guys credit that you have anything left in the tank when you're, done filling up the refrigerator.
Yeah, I can personally say, I just turned 33 actually. It was a lot easier when I was 21, put it that way.
It's just the
But
same diameter.
it's more a factor, I think, of, changing, changing life expectations, what you want to do with your life. When I was 21, I was certainly extremely focused on getting games made. At that point, it was a challenge to see if I could do it because the indie revolution really hadn't taken hold yet. This was, 2000, 2003, 2004, sometime around there.
Well, I have to say, I wasn't really doing anything until actually, it's frustrating. I don't like using the term 2000s. I'd much rather use the term the odds. Nobody
You'd
seems
rather use what?
I'd rather use the odds.
Oh, God. Hey, Justin, I'm getting a little bit of feedback off of your mic, or whatever it is. It sounds like coming off of you. You have your volume up really high?
I just turned it down. Is it better?
Might be. Okay. Jeff, you said you don't like using the term 2000s?
No, I was just on a tangent.
Oh, I see. Okay. I'm having a little trouble hearing you, Jeff. If you want to turn your mic up, can you?
All right, so let's do like this is Craig. Hang on. Yeah, that's pretty much Craig. Oh, I'm off.
Oh, okay. I can hear you now.
Well, now what was that? It sounded like a. Is that Justin?
Yeah, it is Justin. He's actually in the car right now, and he just muted his mic. I'm not exactly sure why, but maybe
Wow, that makes
being,
a lot of difference.
yeah, well, it's just getting a lot of back feed. Maybe he'll come back at some point. um, Brian, you there?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Sweet.
Cool. So this is Brian Mathis. Is that how I pronounce your last name?
That's right.
So Brian, if you'd like to take a moment just to introduce yourself.
Oh gosh. I mean, what I do, I guess.
Here, I'll start off actually. So yeah, Brian is working with me. He's been working with me for, I guess, I don't know, 2 years or so. He's very interested in the game development sort of process, pretty much in marketing aspects now, although originally in programming, and hopefully he'll do some more of that in the future. But also, an extremely avid gamer, and on the younger side compared to me, which is great because he's got a better view of what's in today than I do. Because even when I was his age, I wasn't into what's in then. So aside from that, yeah, what's Brian? Just tell us about what your aspirations are as far as the industry.
Let's see. I mean, making a game that we like to play is pretty cool. And like games that other people want to play too. So if we can make one of those, obviously that'd be great. And whatever money comes along with that is wonderful as well. So.
Yep. Brian is very focused with eye on the pie. Always reminding me to get invoices in to people that are selling our games to make sure we get paid, which is really good because you got to have somebody on top of that.
That's true. A bookkeeper is pretty valuable.
Yeah. Jeff, I don't know if you know Jeff Mackler.
Nope.
No. Either way, Jeff Mackler is a good friend of mine. He's doing the same thing. He's seen me do game development over the years, and what he had told me, he said, you know, Ramo, that's what he calls me, Ramo. He's like, what you need is a slimy businessman, and you'll be all set.
Oh, well, I didn't know. I had no idea.
And while
Job, I can be slimy.
and while I don't consider Brian slimy, he's definitely got more of a focus on getting that cash, as it were.
That's a good focus.
It is a good focus. Very important. So yeah, hopefully Brian's been helping me a lot with Revel Immortal, the project that we've been working on for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But the bigger thing that he's actually been doing in the last, I don't know, I guess 6 or 8 months, is really getting our back catalog on Steam. And we've had it on Steam for a while, and it's brought in some revenue, not a whole lot of revenue. It's kind of hard to expect a lot from games that are pretty old at this point. But anything is better than nothing.
True, but it's hard not to look at the hours you spend on something and to divide it by the money you brought in and realize that 38 cents an hour is not exactly what you signed up for.
Oh, if we only had 38 cents an hour.
Yeah, if only.
Sorry.
Rolling in the dough right now.
I don't mean to brag. I don't want to make you feel bad.
Oh, well, I'm not sure that you've been keeping track of a running total, Jeff.
No, that's true. No, my wife says, keep track of your hours. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You wake up early in the morning, you do a couple hours of work, you have coffee, you take it. Keep track of that.
Yeah.
I have track of hours.
I was just gonna say I have 2 basic measures of how good I'm doing. One, the first measure is whether or not I'm getting emails from happy customers and or seeing talk about us online. That's always exceptional. And 2, what discretional things I can buy when I get random checks in the mail from distributors and such.
Oh,
Pretty good measure. Yeah.
What's that?
It's a pretty good measure,
Yeah, absolutely.
A couple $100, it's a good item right there.
Yeah, because as I say, you can go nuts trying to chase the pennies and the hours, and not starving to death at this point, clearly. So so that's pretty good. But yeah, we're trying to move more towards an accounted, solvent state, and it's gonna be challenging, but basically noticing where the money's going and trying to make sure that more money is coming in than is going out is important.
yeah, obviously. Though a lot of companies, like Amazon, they don't need to make a profit, so.
Yeah, that certainly is a good point. I know Brian wants me to do a Kickstarter more than anything, but see, I have these little things. Not that Brian doesn't have them, but I have like values, and
Oh, damn.
oh snap!
Ouch.
And I have trouble promising people things that I can potentially not deliver on. So that's why we need the slimy businessman someday to just promise people things.
I don't. The Kickstarter thing to me, I've looked at it a couple of times and looked at it with baseball and it didn't pan out. And actually, we did a Patreon.
Yeah, exactly.
For when Jane Austen first started, and I was uncomfortable with that.
Oh, yeah.
I just felt like, well, it's kind of like asking. Well, it's like asking somebody who you want to work for you to say, look, I can't pay you right now, but I can give you a percentage of what we make in the future.
The old rip share.
Which a lot of people do, and sometimes that works out, and sometimes it doesn't. But
yeah, I'm very familiar with that.
Yeah.
Brian's all laughing about that. Well, I mean, in the past, it's really been the only way that I've been able to do any sort of business and have folks involved in things. It's just like, look, there's just no way that I can, I have to spread the risk because the risk of doing this is gigantic,
Or you could, well, I've had a few people do a little bit of work for us on this. We've always paid them just
Yeah,
to get it over with, and not have to. It's almost as if you feel like you're not as committed to the project if you have to ask somebody else to commit it to the same degree. I'd rather be the guy that takes all the risk, and because then on the other side is the reward, but it's also there's a reason why you feel weird about Kickstarter and about those other things.
yeah, and the reason is that I unfortunately know exactly how game development goes.
That's true.
I have to jump in here now that I'm off the road.
Oh, good.
Oh, Justin.
Kickstarter. If you think about it, if you don't think about it that way, as promising something you may not be able to deliver on, you got to think about it a different way. You got to think about it as, do you need money to finish the project? And if you need money, how are you going to get it? And you can either use your own money, which is fine. You can convince someone to invest in you, which is a big promise. You can.
Well, what did we lose? Everybody or just Justin?
I just lost Justin.
Very little in returns. And even a Kickstarter that doesn't succeed or completely succeed, some of them still get positive feedback from people when they're involved with the community and working with people.
Certainly.
And not just taking the money and run. It's not something that should be looked at as a way to get a bunch of money so you get paid before you make your game, but as a way to get your game made.
Right. And
to
maybe
pay for the things you promise.
I would say, maybe it's a failing in me, but if you said to me, okay, Raymond, how much money do you need to finish your game? I'd be like, I couldn't even begin to tell you. Because it's... What's that? I thought I heard somebody say something.
No,
Anyway.
it was the radio came on when I turned off the Bluetooth.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so, if somebody asked me how much money do you need to finish your game, I would not be able to tell them right off the bat. And reason being is that having money would change the approach that I went along it. And unfortunately for me, game development is, in a lot of ways, it's way more of an art than it is a science.
Right, but let's say that that technically you could make a game. You could program it and it'd all be just the worst pixel art in the world with the worst storyline in the world, but man, it would fly. Let's say you know what you need for assets because you have placeholders as assets. So you have a bunch of stick figures running around, and not even good stick figures. You know how many assets you need. You can go and get quotes. And people who do Kickstarters, people who contribute, they want to see your estimates from people.
Right.
And so if you get estimates from a couple of different firms that do artwork on contract, then you have a pretty good idea of how much money it would cost to get the assets you need for artwork or for the story or this or that. And that's the point at which you should start thinking about a Kickstarter. The Kickstarter shouldn't be the first thing you think about. Say, what can I do to make a Kickstarter? It should be, can a Kickstarter help me finish this? And if so, I need to come up with a value on what I need, and it needs to be very detailed and very planned out. Otherwise, you're just, even if you get a bunch of money, you're probably not going to succeed, because if you don't know what you need the money for ahead of time, then you're not going to know what to do with it once you have it.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, good point.
Basically, yeah, you have to essentially write up a business plan for this game. If you don't have a business plan for the game, and not exactly a business plan, but almost, like if you were building a house, you need to have some realistic thoughts about what it's going to take. Some of the games that I've written and continue to write, sadly, are completely out of that scale. They're just, yeah, unfortunately, you can't explain them in just terms like that. The amount of content, basically, to completely iron out the whole game, you've essentially made the game. But a lot of the newer games that I'm starting to work on, which are much shorter term, those are actually very quantifiable like that because they're small enough that you can do that. Anybody want to pick up from there?
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you done talking?
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the reasons why I think maybe Kickstarter is it makes you a little queasy is because it's just a space that is often occupied by charlatans and by people who take advantage of other people. There's a mechanism we already have. It's an old-fashioned mechanism, but it's called a bank you can go to if you really have a good idea. So there's a bit of a scam kind of a feel to it, and maybe I'm just being overly cynical, but I don't feel comfortable being associated with that, so I wouldn't. No, I have in the past, but I wouldn't. Actually, it wasn't my idea to put the Patreon together, but.
Yeah, I would actually feel personally, I would feel better about having a Patreon account because I feel that the concept of what Patreon is aligns more with what I am at least currently doing for the most part. The idea with Patreon is hey, you're making stuff, and I'm going to help support you making stuff. It's very, sort of hands-off, which the name, of course, implies, from the olden days, patronage and etc.
Right. It's more geared to people that make like regular content, like people that put out like something every week or something, not just something that's like ongoing development, like a game.
Yeah, it certainly works better if you have content that is being regularly released because, unfortunately, the majority of lay folk out there don't seem to get that it takes a really freaking long time to make a game.
Yeah, if you're just a really good artist and you like put out a piece every week or something.
No, it's only 99 cents on the App Store. How long could it take?
Hey,
Exactly.
hey, it's free on the App Store. How long could it really take?
Yeah,
Well,
it's got to be a good point.
That's a factor though. The length of time it takes to create a game, or the length of time it takes to create content, is a factor in development. It's because what it does is it allows you to. The longer it takes to do something, the less nimble you are. If you need to shift gears,
Yep.
take a turn that you didn't expect, because it's going to happen. You expect it is almost always going to happen. I wasn't a big fan of the show South Park, but what impressed me about South Park was the primitive nature of the animation on the cartoon meant that they could turn around topical programs very fast. You'd hear something on the news, and then the next week it would be featured on South Park. So there was an advantage to having you lost out perhaps because the graphics weren't as good as some other cartoons, but
Yeah, but the content, of course, was decent, and they had exceptional agility, as you say.
Yeah, I know with South Park, they in 2008 for the election, the election's on a Tuesday and South Park comes out on a Wednesday, and they were able to pre-create a lot of the content, but they made the Wednesday night episode depend on the results of the election. So they kind of had to do 2 episodes that week, and they said they worked around the clock all night Tuesday to get it done. And it was rather entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you try to shove 2 things into the space of one, you're gonna have a problem.
But yeah, they were pretty flexible with what they could do.
So yeah, as Jeff points out, agility is exceptionally important. Utilizing certain tools can increase your agility. I think Brian might have chuckled at agility in terms of being able to turn around. A lot of the stuff that I do, and Brian is being a part of it, we're actually much more agile than we used to be, but it's still like turning the Titanic in a lot of ways.
Well, not only that, but just because of like the complete redesign that we've been through.
Yeah, a couple complete redesigns. We've had a lot of redesign aspects on Revel, which is unfortunate, but it also speaks to the kind of product that I am working on with Revel. Revel is kind of like the avant-garde piece that I've been trying to work on as a follow-up to my sequel. You can't put a price on it. It is a piece of art, and that's good because otherwise you'd never get any profit out of it because you're not going to. But it also speaks to what Brian and I are planning on doing, and actually Justin's going to be a part of one of them, is my wife and I, we did a game in 2008. Some of you might have heard of it, Static Investigator Training. It was an FMV game, and if you looked at it, you'd probably think, oh my god, this game is not great. And that's what a lot of people did seem to think. But what's interesting about it is when you compare it to a lot of the other products that we had put together, it took 3 months from concept to ship. And that's unheard of for us in terms of being able to turn something around like that. And the big factor is a lot of it was full motion video, so there wasn't tons of artwork involved. And the other aspect is it was pre-written before we even started coding it, meaning we had like a complete script of what had to happen. So, given that it took 3 months, our second game, Malathedra, I think took 3 years. Our first game, Morning's Wrath, took 4 years. I'm not even going to quote the years that Revel has taken at this point. It's a lot of years. But that being said, while we didn't get massive amounts of sales with Static, at least at the moment, it has probably outsold our second title, continues to outsell our second title, and because of the small amount of time that was put into it, it has probably actually turned a profit at this point. Which is amazing when you think about the other products which have sold more but have not come anywhere near turning a profit from the time invested. So we're hoping to do some more things like that, basically 3-month sprints, whatever you want to call them, where the idea is really well thought out and pretty much everything is down on quote-unquote paper before we start putting it together, which kind of sounds like a no-brainer, but I mean, if you've ever done game development, which most of you have, getting to that point is not exactly easy.
Well, if you can keep using like the Rebel engine and not, designing a new engine every time you try to make a new game, you might get somewhere a little quicker.
Oh, a little tongue-in-cheek on that one.
Hey.
Yes. Certainly, engine development has always been something that we've done, and we're trying to reuse the Rebel engine a lot. We're really trying to do this concept and not reuse it straight, but basically take it from where it is, tweak it for the game, and then ship it and not try to keep it absolutely compatible with everything, which is kind of a programmer's worst nightmare. But games, they really have a transient nature. Yes, you release it, it sells, and then it keeps selling for a while, and you don't have to maintain it for 20 years necessarily.
But unless you want to.
Well, yeah, unless you want to. But again, with Morning's Wrath, our first game, which was written in 2005, we just finished an update to it, and as you can imagine, the code had rotted considerably from 2005. But what we did is, instead of going and trying to just fix up some things, we just cut the back end and put it on top of a whole new API for graphics and everything, SDL2. And while that did take a lot longer, it took a lot longer for some other reasons, but the actual API transform was like a 2-week project, which is not terrible. I'll tell you what did take a long time, though, and it may not be a surprise to some of you. What took a long time was when some people who shall not be named, our publisher, wanted changes made to the game content as well as some of the ways that the game played. All very good good suggestions, but the moment you start futzing with the Rubik's Cube or the tile puzzle, everything starts getting out of line.
Yeah. So you had somebody looking over your shoulder?
We definitely had somebody looking over our shoulder. I mean, we had no obligation to them, which is great, but the only obligation is, they have to feel comfortable to publish our game on Steam. So it's a mutual relationship where we want to provide them a product that they feel comfortable with because we want it to be published on the platform. So I think, as I say, all of their suggestions, they were very good suggestions. It's just some things fall outside of the realm of reality.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to find some connection though, because I think what you work on and what I work on they may both be called games, but they seem very different.
They are.
Um, and I think, and that's certainly kind of an obvious thing, but I almost think it's weird to call what I work on or what I have produced as a game. More, I think maybe more of an experience. That's not a very good word either, but I think maybe the category game has become too broad and it needs to be. It's maybe a bit like the category music. Maybe you're talking about jazz and I'm talking about country music or something.
Yeah, and certainly a lot of the things that we've done, we home grow a lot of it. I'd say that we're really experimental, but we're also terribly common. So we do a lot of the things ourselves, very indie, but at the end of the day, like Morning's Wrath is a Diablo clone. And so yeah, it's we could certainly have done some of what we did without reinventing the wheel in the way that we did, but it also helps set us apart. It certainly did at that point. It's hard to say whether it will in the future, but a lot of people who ended up buying our games were quite taken with the fact that we pretty much were able to do it at all because, again, most of these games were done before the quote-unquote indie revolution in 2008, 2009. So it was a breath of fresh air. If you ever take a look at the accolades on our old website, people were amazingly surprised that the stuff that we're doing, which at the moment is being hailed as not that great, was actually really great for the time. So,
Yeah, that's what seems kind of weird to me. Not weird. I'm not judging it. I'm just saying
sure.
I'm disconnected from it because every time we make an update to the game, we get feedback on it. So we're getting a lot of positive feedback, and we're getting a lot of constructive feedback, and even some negative feedback. But it's coming in kind of in real time, and we're adjusting to it as we need to. So I would not want to be in a situation where it was a start to finish development process, release, and then cross your fingers and hope the critics like it.
Yeah, and
More risky that way,
it definitely is. And for a lot of things, unfortunately, it kind of is. I think because your game is in Facebook, and I think it's clear that your audience has some idea that they can guide it, I think you're in a very good spot. For the vast majority of people who come across a game on Steam, I think for the most part, and do correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, the impression that they're going to first get is probably going to stick with them.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Which is to say, if it doesn't appeal to them right off the bat, they're probably going to stick with it for the most part. What I think is important is, we've done a very good job of not doing a very good job of keeping in touch with people. I think what we need to do at this point is not release something and just hope and think that, oh my goodness, everybody's going to start playing it again. We did an okay job a while ago where we were doing regular updates to Revel and we were telling people about it, and I think you probably need to do like 3 to 6 months of that before you start reeling people in again, because people are going to see something at first and they're not going to touch it, and then they have to keep seeing it, and one day they might pick it up,
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Because I know for me at least, I'll see, a good example for me was Team Fortress 2. Everybody was talking about Team Fortress 2, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yeah, 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 yeah. And then there was one day when I saw it just, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll try it. So, if they had released it once and never talked about it again, probably wouldn't have tried it. So I think that consistency is important, and that it isn't. I mean, certainly the times when we released Morning's Wrath and Malathedra, it was pretty much create it, drop it, send out to news sources, and that's when you got your big push. But if we probably consistently kept pushing on it, it would be a lot better. But we didn't really have anybody dedicated to continue doing that, and I've since come to realize that generally speaking, I am not the best person for that. I am not a person who likes telling people about what I perceive as nothing. And as a engineer type person, I am not a good judge of what is and isn't something.
Do you mean from like an artist eye or something? Or
Yeah, exactly, from an artist's eye. Like, for instance, to me, a lot of things that most people don't find interesting, I find interesting. And a lot of things which I don't find interesting, apparently people would find interesting, and certainly people can spin and make sound way more interesting than it is.
Well, you need other people's perspective. You can't rely on your own. Just your
Oh,
own.
absolutely.
You end up in an echo chamber. It doesn't work.
But for me, like, if I'm like, oh, I did this, this, and this, but it doesn't really look like much and nobody's going to see it, I probably won't talk about it to anybody who is outside of technical things. You need somebody who can kind of see the value in that and then actually spit it out and tell the community about it in a way that they can understand.
So, Raymond, on another kind of track.
Sure.
Is that your dog?
Not my dog, no.
Well, that reminds me of a line from the Pink Panther.
That's not my dog.
Not my dog. Okay. No, what I was going to ask you was, of course, I forgot already. No, your basic business model is to create a game, put it up on Steam, and have people purchase it.
Yeah, generally speaking.
Okay, so there's no, you don't give it away for free and then try to monetize power-ups.
No.
Or you don't.
Even with our news stuff, it's generally speaking, there's a free-to-play area, and then after that, you need to sort of purchase access to the other locations rather than the straight-up monetization tactic that's been used in games, with gems or gold or whatever.
You get like a small demo for free, and then you can buy the full game.
Yep.
Well, can you see yourself working with a different model than just $9.95 or whatever it happens to be for the game, and you download the game and you just own it? Can you see yourself working with a different? There's more than just one. I mean, there's freemium, and there's also you can do it with advertising and.
Yeah, I could definitely see us. We could potentially work with a different model. I've tried a couple of ad things in the past, but the issue is that at least with the kind of games that I write / we write, they don't really lend themselves super well to ads that are kind of out of place. That makes sense.
Well,
yeah, ads need to be in a game that is kind of repetitive. Like, if it's a game like an RPG where you're going to play it and you're going to beat it, it doesn't have a whole lot of replay value. People are going to beat it and they're ready to move on. And so with ads, you're not going to get the same kind of revenue you get with something where you've got something that just gets harder and harder and harder, but it's the same thing, like a puzzle game or checkers or card games or a lot of other games that are kind of always the same, but the game plays out different each time.
Well, what about the ad model where there's just a gateway to get into the game, where it's just you have to watch a 20-second video, and then you can do whatever you want. Then you're free to do whatever you want. Isn't that a little bit less intrusive than compromising somehow the whatever experience you're creating.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I think if such a system existed, then you can put that in there, and then of course you give up the option for people to purchase the game and avoid that. It certainly exists. The issue, I think personally, is when people see ads in games, they it tells them something about the game. For instance, you don't see ads in Fallout 4. At least not on subliminal ones, but um, the idea is that a game of a certain quality doesn't need ads to support it. Now, I guess you could say that's not the kind of games that we write necessarily, but I think it's the kind of games that we aspire to write. And I say we, meaning Brian and I.
For me, I'm wanting to develop games. Like I used to want to develop games that I would want to play, and I agree that's a horrible idea because I've gotten nowhere with that. But now I'm trying to my motivation is because my kid can't find any games to play on my phone when she wants to play on my phone or on a tablet, or even I bought her a Nintendo DS, and it's like a lot of the games are really difficult for younger children. Like when I was 5, I played Mario. I didn't have to know how to read. Um, or maybe I was 4. I don't know, but you didn't have to know how to read. You didn't have to, remember a bunch of stuff. You just played. You just picked it up. You didn't even need an instruction manual. You just did it, and it kind of, worked itself out. And I don't like games that I don't like going to download a game that looks fun and then it shows me the permissions it requires and it needs like everything on my phone. And I also don't want to download a game that is gonna if the first thing I see when I launch an app is an advertisement, I don't even bother going into the app to see what it's about. I just uninstall it because I mean I understand the need for advertisements to make money, but I don't want it to be the first thing I see. I want it, it needs to flow or something. I want to, I'm a fan of the demo purchase model. Just make a demo. If you like the demo, buy the game. But I want to target younger children, and like as a parent, I don't want my kids being advertised to. I don't want to have to figure out how to make it to where if they tap on an ad, they don't get the phone or the device in a state that is all crazy, or they buy 1,000 Groupons. I just,
Are they?
I wanna make something that somebody knows that they can buy it, and it's bought and it's safe. And
Right.
I mean, I'd even play games like that. I mean, it's just kind of a no-brainer. Like I think there's a lot of people that really want that kind of game. Partly because you look at Amazon doing that underground, where they're trying to make games that you buy it once and then you've bought it. And I've bought a few of those games like that, and some of them are games that have in-app purchases, but they've like around it. And so once you buy the game, basically when you go to get more coins or something, it just automatically gives them to you. It doesn't go through the purchase thing. And it's really nice to find games that you can just buy it and own it and be done.
Mm. See, I think what you're talking about there actually, it's kind of funny. It's not even about the game. It's really that sort of trusted ethos kind of culture. That's kind of that's the product, in my opinion, and the game is kind of secondary. But yeah, it's hard to believe that is the majority of games, but I wouldn't doubt that the majority of apps, have ads right up in front, or are kind of devious because it is kind of a supposed cash grab.
Yeah, it seems like the mobile games are like that a lot. As far as like on the desktop or web-based games, it seems that they all just use a little bit of advertising that's out of the way, but they have more screen space, so it's not really in your face. You almost don't notice it. But definitely, yeah, mobile apps, they're just, I don't don't know, they all just seem so evil.
Yeah, the mobile space is kind of saturated, which is kind of an understatement.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to amend what my earlier statement about not creating games that you would want to play. I think, uh, Justin, what you have in your mind is a really good place to start because you have this and you see the need, and you're personally invested in it, and it's not an idea that you had that would solve somebody else's problem. It's an idea that would solve your own problem, and that's in a lot of ways that's a really good motivation for you to actually see it through. Um, and I think there's real value. I think people will if you put your heart into it, and you're coming at it from the standpoint of the person who's going to be using it, then that'll show through the finished product, and people will be able to see that. Now, you don't want to create a barrier. People are so sensitive to barriers, to ads, to um, complicated interfaces, and so you have to worry about all that kind of stuff. But I think if you once you have the confidence of the user, then I don't think they'll mind paying a subscription or however it is that the model is going to be. There's so many things out that you can do, so many different ways.
Right, right.
You shouldn't. I wouldn't say, "Oh, I'm never going to do ads because it seems sleazy and it's not my style." You just don't know. The space is changing all the time, and um, the phenomenon of mobile is relatively new. Well, it's extremely new, and there might be something that no one's thought of out there for monetization that takes advantage of the fact that people are sick of how most apps are created. That they don't like this. So there's a style out there waiting to be developed that no one's even thought of yet. That will be very acceptable because it'll be so different than what they're used to. Kind of a thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I had a thought and it has escaped me. Uh, I got distracted because the audio feed cut out for me for a second and kind of derailed me.
Also, I just kind of went on and on and on. That tends to make people lose their thoughts.
Yeah, that happens too. Yeah, I think with what my original plan was for this was if I think, okay, I'm going to make an app and I'm going to make a bunch of money, I'm going to get distracted real quick and I'm going to lose focus because that's not enough to motivate me because I don't see making a lot of money happening, you know. Um, but saying, I'm going to make an app that solves a problem, my problem, that I think other people might have too. But then I want it to also have a really like I can make an app to help my daughter learn to read that doesn't need voice recognition. But where's the fun in that? Like, the idea I'm chasing right now is my overall goal because I was telling my wife what I was wanting to do, and I told her I was just going to give it away. I wasn't planning on charging any money for it or doing ads. And she's like, why? And my thinking is, it solves a problem. People enjoy it, and they get to use it, and I know I'm making the world better through that. So I have my own self-fulfillment. But then, I'm not a game developer. I have a 9 to 5 doing, enterprise code. And occasionally, things go wrong. The company I was working for are closing their offices up here and moving everybody that's still working there down to Houston.
Mm.
I jumped ship before that, when I saw things going down. We had several rounds of layoffs, and it's stressful to be in that kind of environment, and then switching, jobs to another industry is stressful, and it's not fun. It's not something I like to do all the time. But if I have several apps that I've made, they may not give me money directly or a lot of money directly, but if I give it away free, or at least parts of it away for free, and throw some code up on GitHub, that increases my overall value when I'm trying to find employment. Because, when you go to interviews, like, you could take a coding test, you can answer questions, you can whiteboard all day long. They're not going to have any idea whether or not you can do what you say you can do until you start working there. And I mean, there's a whole industry around trying to figure out whether or not someone can code. So you got a candidate that actually has contributions to open source projects, or is the front runner of some open source projects, that most of the code is theirs. You can see what the code looks like. You can see that it works, which I think is the most important part, is that they made something, started it, and finished it. And, it works. And that's kind of what my vision is right now, is to try to make some small apps that are good for kids to, and not even necessarily learning, because I think we throw learning at them too much. I think they just sometimes need to have fun, but not necessarily worrying about how to make money, because I could put ads in it, I could do everything, and I might get a check for $50 in 3 years, like that 38 cents an hour, but
Looking pretty good.
that's not, yeah, that's not a plan, I want to make games because that's what I want to do. I want to make games, but I know that I'm not going to make any money doing it unless I bump heads with somebody big and they're like, "Hey, you want to sell the rights to this? You're cutting into our sales." They're like, "Yeah. Where do I sign?" you know, that to me is the end goal. Is the apex of success on making a game from my point of view.
Well, I guess I've already made the apex of success then.
So, Justin, can you explain to me the voice recognition thing? And it seems to me like that's would be really complicated software. Is that something that's already been developed by a company and you just import it into your app? Is that how it works?
There are companies that have some that you can purchase and use a license for.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about going that route, but I'm trying to explain to them that I don't have any money, so I need a cheaper licensing model. But CMU, Carnegie Mellon University, has a open source product that they developed called Sphinx, and it is I think they're working on version 5 now. It's written in C, and they've got a Java version as well, and there are ports to make it work on Android. There's ports. Someone's made a port that wraps it into, like, converts the C into JavaScript somehow, and it actually works. And so the work you still have to do a lot of work using that library. You still have to train a acoustic model, and sometimes you might have to do some more work than that. My best description of what's involved with this is when I went into their mailing list and asked some questions, the responses I got to my questions were in a different language. And I don't mean not English. I mean, like, when my wife asks me how the internet works, and I start telling her, she looks at me like I'm speaking Chinese. And that's how I felt. I felt like I had no clue what they were talking about. They were talking about phonemes, and they threw out mathematical terms, and I mean, not mathematical terms that I'm not familiar with, or completely unfamiliar with, but I don't understand the use case for what they're doing, and I've never worked with a hidden Markov model or any of these things. But most of that is abstracted out, and you can use a toolkit to basically you data mine your audio to train the system to recognize what you want it to recognize. And they've got some that are just available that are trained from some public sources. But depending on what you're doing, especially if you're making an app that's going to be using trying to recognize children's voices, you're going to have to train it differently, because it's not trained on children's voices. It's trained on adults' voices.
Well, it sounds like a that sounds like a tough thing to do.
You need transcripts from Sesame Street.
Yeah, it's kind of it like that's where I'm at right now with the project. Is kind of a roadblock is that I really need to develop the content for the app so that way I can train the speech recognition to the content. And I don't know, I just haven't had the I don't know, I kind of go through a cycle of coming home from work and doing a lot of artwork. I'll do that for a few months, and then I'll come home from work. I'll pretend artwork doesn't exist, and I'll just code every day when I get home for a few months, and then I'll come home and I'll write stories, and then I'll cycle back into artwork maybe after dabbling with some mechanical engineering or something like that. Um, I used to fight it, but now I just realize that's the way it's going to go, so I just try to schedule things to where, okay, as soon as I start slipping out of my interest in this, I have a backlog that I can just go to for the next thing that I know I'll be chasing for the next few months.
Well, that sounds like a beneficial. That could actually help you in the long run. I think it has helped me to have different skills. Some graphic skills. Raymond will tell you that I'm not the most uh, learned uh, engineer, but I have sound background, and I put all this stuff together, and even sales background and marketing background. I a little bit of everything, and if you're going to do independent stuff, that definitely helps because then you really don't. You really, really is no job you can't handle,
True.
and it's best to be forced into a situation to handle it. As Raymond, we can tell you, is when we were together last time, I told him about uh, when I did the back end database for the game that I'm working on. It was done horribly, but it worked just fine because there wasn't any traffic. And once the traffic increased, then all of its flaws were exposed, and I didn't really know a lot about working with back end, so I had to learn how to do it. So sometimes I think that diversity of interest, especially if you want to if you want to have more independence and do more of your own thing, it gives you the opportunity to perhaps do more of it yourself from start to finish and not depend on other people. What kind of art do you do?
Um, just whatever. I've tried painting, sculpting, drawing. Right now I'm doing some digital painting on the iPad, but I'm not that good. I can do line art okay, but I can't ever get past the step of having something that's a decent outline and actually making it look like something good. So I'm trying to see, what I can do to get past that right now, if that makes any sense.
Well, I don't draw, but I I think from an aesthetic point of view, I've always had the capability to recognize when something works. So it is more like just trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. And also so you have to know if you're doing a project and it's just not working, you've got to be able to recognize that you've got to try something different.
Yeah.
But attention to detail is uh, any artwork is you look at any work of art and you think that person is talented. You don't think that person put a lot of time into it. When the truth is probably it was more like they put a lot of time into it. When you see somebody juggling, when I see somebody juggling, I don't think, "Wow, that's amazing! What a great talent!" That I could have used that when I was younger to impress girls, but which probably wouldn't have worked. But all I see when I see somebody juggling is, Jesus, they spent a lot of time learning how to juggle.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, talent is something you can't control. You either have it or you don't. And talent is helpful in any endeavor, but it can only get you so far. And I think that having talent in an area can actually be a detriment to you because if you've always have everyone telling you, oh, you're so good at this, you're so good at this, you're so good at this, then you get to a phase in your life where you're actually playing in the big leagues, and these people aren't impressed,
Sure.
then that can really pop your bubble. And, you can either, some people fight through it and some people lapse. Um, and I've been on both sides of that. I've had things that I've been just kind of sort of good at, and everyone's always told me I was good at it, and then one day it's like I don't know anything about this, and it's very sobering. And for me, I can't resist a challenge, so
Mm.
I'll attack it. I'll attack it as a challenge until at least until I get to the point where I'm like, okay, I've gone far enough along this that I know I could, I've got the concept done. I don't need to do this anymore.
All right.
And
You feel like you can beat it.
yeah, once I feel like I can beat it, I lose interest.
Sure. I'm the same way. For me, though, I've always had a certain staying power. When I first started doing game development and I met a lot of other game developers, one of the questions they would ask me is, how do you, keep with it? How do you actually manage to finish stuff? And it is kind of funny with what you say, Justin. My answer there is like, well, you just do it until it's done. You don't stop doing it. And you don't whine about it, you just do it. But that's only really part of it. As I've gotten older and my life has become more complicated and more rich as a result of it, it has become harder to focus on it. So I think I'll revise it. You just do it and have no life. It's definitely hard, as I know Justin will tell you, to balance personal life as well as game development. Certain types of game development require a lot of time and a lot of people, and the fewer the people, the more the time. But really, at the end of the day, it still is the truth that in order to finish something of this magnitude, you do have to sit down and do it, which is, it's obvious, but it's also elusive.
Just do it.
Yes, exactly. Just do it. When I started doing this, I would talk with a lot of people who absolutely love talking about doing it and not actually doing it. They love the idea of making games, but not actually making games. And I certainly love the idea of making games. I love talking about making games. I do actually love making games, but it's so much easier to talk about making games.
That is true.
Which is what we're doing right now, basically.
As far as the industry goes, and try to change the topic a bit,
Sure.
I've been noticing a lot of this trend of gamification of things that aren't games at all. There's an app called Habitica, and there's a few others that are just like it that try to make a game out of your to-do list. You create a to-do list of things that you want to have be daily habits or weekly habits or whatever, and you assign some difficulty level to it, and if you complete it, you get experience points and gold. If you don't complete it, you lose health. And eventually you get a sword and you join a raid and fight monsters based on your to-do list. It's real easy to cheat, but you're only cheating yourself with that kind of game, right? Like, if somebody's like, yeah, I've got a higher experience points than you, it's not like Call of Duty, it's, it's like, yeah, you cheat at life to win at a game about improving life. Like, okay. But I've also noticed that with work, I remember in the workplace a few years ago, this, what was it called? I think it was called Yammer, not Yammer. I think whatever it was, work.com is what it ended up being branded as ultimately, but it was like a social media thing for the workplace, but instead of being like, hey, here's pictures from my party that are going to keep me from running for president in the future, it's, hey, you really helped me on this project, and And then of course, you can send secret messages to people's managers to say, "Hey, this person is not awesome," and you can send secret compliments too. And
Gamifying
there's
work.
badges, and it's kind of gamifies working. So when your review comes up, they look at the feed, and it's like, man, all these people have all these good things to say about you. No, and it's like, okay, yeah, you're getting a raise, and you get badges and stuff. And I've seen a extension for Visual Studio that does the same thing. It gives you achievements for using Visual Studio. And I don't know. It just seems like a trend. Is that trend going to continue? Are we going to see everything get gamified? Or are we going to end up in like idiocracy where all the computers are dumbed down for us to keep
Look,
us
Jeff,
motivated?
it's got the stuff people crave. Yeah, I mean, call me old, but
Oh,
absolutely, absolutely insane the amount of that kind of thing. I'm old.
Raymond,
Yeah.
or anybody actually. So there's this game in Japan, right? That's kind of like Facebook. No, not Japan, China, which is kind of like Facebook.
There's
Anybody
a
familiar with it?
game Facebook.
What's that?
It's a game like Facebook, Facebook the game. And
Let me rephrase that. Again, I guess I'm thinking the game category is way too broad. So there's a platform like Facebook
sure.
in China.
Yep.
I don't know what it's called, but it's called something.
Okay.
But not being able to remember all the details. But it has something to do with it is more like a game because you get points for doing certain things. Now I'm not going to remember any of what I read, but essentially it's sponsored by the government of China.
I know what you're talking about.
Okay, so somebody else is looking
No
for it.
doubt. No
I'll
doubt.
show you. I can link it.
And it's actually a voluntary thing, but they are planning to make it mandatory.
There you go.
Now that's the scariest thing I've ever heard because
So yeah, Brian
are
put
you
the
a good
link.
citizen and you can just go to your profile to see if you're a good good citizen. So
Yeah, they're gamifying obedience to the government. Congrats, China.
Oh my god.
Like, you're supposed to, report your neighbor if he's not doing, good acts and all this, And it can affect the kind of jobs you can hold. It's scary as shit.
yeah, it is very scary.
Yeah.
It's
But
like a credit score for how good of a citizen you are to the Republic of China or whatever.
Yeah.
There's an
Government
episode of
needs-
Community that's kind of like that.
Yeah, so now governments are finding ways to, gamify obedience to them, I guess. This is great.
I think the other thing, for me, when we mention how I don't like the gamification of things to some degree, I'm actually not that much of a social butterfly. I'm a little bit of one, more than some, but not really a lot. I don't feel the need to share all of everything that I'm doing with everybody at every time. Do you know what I mean?
No,
Yeah.
I don't understand that at all.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. You're weird,
Like you don't tell everybody on Twitter that you're going to pee or
Yeah, what's wrong with you? You don't post your meal every day?
Yeah, so see that kind of stuff, unfortunately, that's not exactly me. And I actually, to some degree, I feel like, I overtalk and overshare to some degree, but apparently the vast majority of people really love saying the trite crap that they're doing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that means I'm unsuited to talk with apparently the rest of the social world.
Well, see, gamification of stuff isn't necessarily a social endeavor. Yeah, the use cases that I've seen it in are social in nature, but you think about it, gamification is a really old way to change behavior. You do it in elementary school. There's all games to learn how to rhyme words that they used to do on road trips, where you'd say a certain number of syllables and, try to find the rhyming words or
Yeah, I
something.
didn't do that
But,
either.
but it's, they've always got the, I don't remember any of the games that we did in school, but I remember there's always a version of Jeopardy for every subject, or or a type of Wheel of Fortune, that was homegrown by the teacher to learn this or that.
Yeah.
And, and just trying to think of that trend. It's a trend, and being a trend, if you want to do something that could be popular, trends are good. You jump on the wave and ride it out, and then move on.
I've never really
And
believed
so,
that jumping on the wave is even possible. To me, I feel like when you realize the wave is the wave has already gone by. But maybe I'm
nah, no, I don't think so. I think that some of the trends move a lot slower than they appear. Just because, just look at a lot of the games that make a lot of money that really are the same game as every other game. And they keep making the same game over and over again for years before something comes out that changes everything. If you know what I mean?
sure. No, I know exactly what you mean. Like on mobile, we have the Candy Crush type game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
that
match
that trend.
threes and the endless runners and
Yep, and
all that shit.
in sort of more mid-grade, mid-core games, we've got the MOBAs, and then we've got the different class shooters.
And the town building stuff.
Yep, yep. Anything Minecraft derivative. So, yeah, I mean, certainly those are categories of familiar, approachable mechanics. Um, yeah, I mean, see, for me, it's interesting. I've never really been into the social aspect of games all that much. And I'm talking about, I mean, there was a social aspect of games that existed well before the internet, which is, everybody comes over and you gather around the
Land
console.
party.
Yeah, never been into that sort of thing. I really enjoyed single player games where it was just sort of a personal experience. Brian's like, "Oh, well, that makes a lot of sense."
Yeah.
No wonder you have shitty taste in games.
Damn.
But I don't know. Can anybody relate to me in that?
I used to like playing single player games that had multiplayer. So like Baldur's Gate, loved that game. I'd play on single player, and then I like to go on and play multiplayer and talk with people. The first Diablo game was a lot of fun. And I like PvP aspects of multiplayer games, but I don't just like PvP. I like teamwork PvP because that's more of a challenge. I like you know, I, for me, I like the tactical strategy in a team game. And unfortunately, I don't think there's any games on the market outside of a very small subset that really can capture the teamwork in PvP. And I think that's a shame, but then again, it's really hard to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, not exactly, but
So like, I really like Combat Flight Simulator because it's hard that a lot of the punks don't even bother. Like they try it, they can't figure it out, and they give up. You actually enjoy the game, and you have to learn how to fly an airplane, and you have to learn how to shoot while flying an airplane, and you have to learn how not to get shot while flying an airplane. And
right.
it's not easy, and it takes time to get to the battle. And if you accidentally shoot your people that are on your team, they get angry with you. You get angry with you.
Right, so it's a
um,
high barrier of entry, basically.
yeah, it's got a bit of a barrier to entry, yeah. But like once you get in and you fly with a squad on the voice chat and you've got teamwork going on, especially on the Friday night squad ops where there's like 20 squads all participating in a huge Axis versus Allies type uh,
Scenario.
thing with multiple missions and having, you have people coordinating different missions, and you've got bomber interceptors, you've got bomber escorts, you've got patrols, you've got all sorts of stuff going on all at the same time, and your tiny 5-person squadron can make a difference in the outcome. And the challenge that's there is just, it's insane. And there's a lot of adrenaline, especially on that particular game on the Friday Night Squad Ops. Once you get shot down, you're done. you know, so it's quite exhilarating. Whereas like Call of Duty, you get a clan, all you need is a bunch of people, same team, that are good. They don't have to work together. They just all have to be good. And that's not quite the same level of teamwork.
Right.
Not just a bunch of people who are good, but a bunch of people who can work together, because if you don't have a chance. And that's hard to capture in a game.
Yeah, it's true. It's funny as you're explaining that, though. I'm like, wow, that sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah,
Not to
It
make
is a lot of work.
I'm like, oh my god, I'm supposed to be enjoying myself. It sounds like Eve, actually, like Eve Online.
yeah.
No, it's probably a little bit worse.
Oh god.
There's no spreadsheets.
Oh well, that's important. Yeah. So unfortunately, yeah, for me, that's getting into like tabletop level kind of involvement, which to me, yeah. As I say, I really enjoyed Team Fortress 2. I think the thing that I most enjoyed about Team Fortress 2, I like first-person shooters for the most part. It wasn't really such that it was multiplayer, but TF2 in general, it had a great aesthetic to me, which kind of drew me to it.
You should play Overwatch.
Yeah, see, I've been watching Overwatch, and yeah, I'm not ready there. I see. It was the same thing with TF2. I'll probably play it just before it's dead, and and unfortunately, yeah, I can't get. I have too much to do to get lost to Overwatch. So that's.
Yeah.
Y'all are talking about Overwatch, and I haven't played that, and I probably won't get around to it, but it reminded me of when I got Destiny, because a friend told me I had to play it and kept telling me and telling me. So
I
I
heard
got
about
Destiny.
but I didn't.
I played it a lot. I got some really awesome gear, and then they released another expansion. I got the expansion, and it was like I started all over. Like, everybody that doesn't have jobs already had all the best stuff. I was useless in any competitive PvP. I mean, I might as well have bought a brand new game.
Oh yeah.
Like, everything I'd done before the expansion almost didn't matter anymore.
Yeah, there's always going to be kids without jobs that are way better than you.
Yeah, that sucks.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's always going to be that, but there's, I don't know, I liked Quake. You didn't have gear, you just ran around, picked up a gun, and everybody was on the same level. If you could play 60 hours a week, you would be better,
Yeah,
but
although
you
I mean,
still were
yeah,
all on the
yeah.
same level. You didn't have gear making a difference.
I mean, yeah, it's true. Gear making a difference can be a thing, but let's all admit that every one of us has come up against an extremely good Quake player who get freaking handed your shit to you.
Oh, yeah. I don't even care if I win. I just want to almost win.
That's another
You
reason
know.
why I can't play many games like that. I do care if I win. And unfortunately, you come to realize, so you get just good enough that you're like, I'm never going to be that good, and then it's frustrating. So.
Yeah,
I found that
sucks.
alcohol can help with that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just,
I don't
you
think that's
know.
going to help me much. I think that might exacerbate the issue.
Oh, okay. I find that if I'm playing a first-person shooter, about 2 beers in, I will get a lot of kills. Because I
The
quit
Balmer
thinking about
curve.
the game and I just play it. But then, by the end of the 3rd beer, I might as well stop playing.
Yeah, it's the Balmer curve. Um, Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, for me, what I'm trying to capture, which I think you were talking about with the flight simulator game there, with the games that I'm writing, obviously I like writing pretty decent single player games, but I would like to get some quote unquote meta going, such that users interact with one another outside of the game, but within the context of the game.
So you want a community.
Yeah, basically, I would like to have a community around it because that's the only thing, you know, if you are writing games like we are, which are adventures, RPGs, etc., you know, there will be some expansions and stuff, but pretty much once played the game, it's pretty much the end. So you want to have people who really like the game and can contagiously continue to interact with other people who,
Or you
like.
could have like different ways that you can play the game and have all these people that play it a different way, like interact.
Yeah, it's true. Game modes are always important. It really depends on the game, of course. In my opinion, the more story and scripted aspects that you have in it, the less you can do that. But um, yeah, and the whole thing is, I think, it's important to vary the kind of games that we're going to create as well. I mean, we could be just the adventure slash RPG making game company, but I think being able to experiment with a bunch of different things is refreshing. And it's not like I'm counting on the paycheck for it, so I should be able to experiment with whatever the hell I want. It's kind of one of the benefits.
And with that, it is now 7 o'clock here in Texas, so
8 o'clock here.
I'm probably gonna have to call it a night and go home and do all the stuff I do there.
All right, well, not a problem. Thank you very much for being a part. Hope you'll join us again sometime.
All right, it's been a pleasure. Y'all have a good night.
You as well. See you, Justin. All right. Did Jeff die on us?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't hear him talking. Jeff, don't go to the light, Jeff. All right, well, I think we'll call it as is. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of this. We'll be putting up another link at some time in the future. Hope to do these semi-regularly, and we'll have a different topic. This one was primarily for introductions and just opinions. But
Sorry, I'm still here.
oh, there you are, Jeff.
Yeah, sorry. I was just I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to
Justin.
Justin.
Yeah, he just head out, but
Yeah, sorry.
no doubt he'll be back soon, or some next time. So I think we're gonna probably break the meeting at this point. And yeah, hopefully we'll have another one of these relatively soon. Just watch the Facebook group, and hopefully we'll have some other faces too, and different agenda topics. Like I said, this was mostly just introductions and sort of general opinions on things. But this is good. You can search for this on YouTube. Not that we would need to rehear ourselves, but if you want to show it to somebody else, you can do that as well. It's also been posted in Reddit and on Twitter in our subreddit.
God, that's scary.
Wow. All right.
That's scary.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everybody's going to love to hear you, Brian. All right, everybody. Have a good evening, and thank you again.
Thanks, Raymond. Take care.
Bye-bye.